dive into the interesting topic of Dataverse for Teams. My slides are not working. There you go. Not working. Sorry, guys. Need to reshare, republish using slideshow. Nope. There you go. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Albers. I'm a technology consultant and I work for a Dutch Microsoft partner, Macau, as my focus is Power Platform. I'm a co-organizer of one of the Power Platform user groups, Power Addicts NL. I'm a business applications MVP since December of 2019. And as mentioned, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a book nerd and I'm a lover of all things unicorn. Maybe you saw. Well, I just saw that Chris was actually wearing a sweater with a unicorn. So I'm not wearing anything unicorny today, but I do have a lot of those. And my family consists of 3 cats and 1 husband. We actually adopted 2 kittens very recently. So if you hear any like cat noises in the background, we have one little rascal who was found pretty young without his mother. So he still feels anxious as soon as there's nobody around. So then he starts meowing very hard. Well, hopefully we'll get through this without any issues. So when I created this presentation, I was actually, because it's Dataverse for Teams, it's actually for both Microsoft 365 and Power Platform Dataverse kind of people. I thought, okay, let's pick an audience. So the audience I picked is you have some experience with the Power Platform and Power Apps, and maybe you worked with Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents as well. Dataverse experience, not really necessary, but it's Dataverse Summit. So I have a question about that up next. Next thing is I worked, so you worked with Microsoft Teams. That's kind of important. Well, you all are using Teams at the moment, so I assume you understand something, but it's kind of important to also understand the security concepts of Teams. So owners, members, guests. Just a show of hands. So who of you guys have more than, or girls or guys, have more than 5 years experience with Dataverse? So just use the raise hands option. Let's see if I can see anything about that. So, okay, sorry guys, I need to move this to my other screen because otherwise I don't see any raised hands. Okay, thank you. So there's 4 people who have over 5 years. So who of you have no Dataverse experience at all? So 5+ years, you can lower it. And that's totally fine, right? It's so 2, 3. Okay, so I assume that the rest is somewhere in between. So let's do 4, 3, 4. Okay, so I assume the rest. But so let's see. I have like 1 or 2 years experience with Dataverse. Okay, couple. Okay, so it's kind of a mixed bag. That's okay. So I'll know how to deep dive into the kind of table qualities of Dataverse for Teams, which is there's some overlap with the regular Dataverse, but some is not. Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. So So what my goal is that at the end of this session, you will understand what Dataverse for Teams is, kind of important, what type of apps you can build with it and where you can use them. You understand the security concepts and how to apply them, and you know a little bit of application lifecycle management. So how to manage and deploy your Dataverse for Teams applications. The topics are basically this. What is Dataverse for Teams? Then go into what do we have in the toolbox, like building apps, flows, bots, and reports. I have a separate section on working for tables, and then some application lifecycle management, and if we have time, some tips, tricks, and gotchas. But I will share the slide deck, so if we don't have time, that's for some reading material for yourself at some other date and time. So to first start, what is Dataverse for Teams? Let's stop this annoying thing at the top. Yes. So what is Dataverse for Teams? I actually did a Power Apps 101 session where I explained that Canvas apps is like a love relationship between PowerPoint and Excel. Well, in this session, again, I have a love relationship, but in this case, it's actually between the Power Platform and Microsoft Teams. So Dataverse for Teams is the deep integration between Microsoft Teams and the awesome tools that we have in the Power Platform, Dataverse, Power Apps, Power Automate, PVA, and Power BI. It is making use of environments. So if you listen to Chris and Auntie before, they talked about environments a lot. Well, Dataverse for Teams also relies on the same type of, no, not the same type, but the same environments, Power Platform environments. But what is really specific is that this environment is actually connected to a specific team. So it's a one-on-one relationship between your environment and your team. You can use that environment to build and consume apps inside of the Teams client. So it's not only embed Power Apps that we already could, but it's actually to build tables and to build bots and to build apps using Teams apps inside of the Teams client. It includes a lightweight version of Dataverse. Means we have a lot of the functionality that Big Brother Dataverse has, but not all. So there are, it's really a lightweight version. And then that's why I have the money thing. It's actually covered by all the licenses containing Microsoft Teams. So basically everyone that has a Microsoft 365 license where Teams is turned on, they can make use of this without additional licensing needed. So basically freemium Dataverse. Awesome, right? So the tool belt of Dataverse for Teams is Canvas apps, Power Apps. So we don't have model-driven apps. We do have Canvas apps. Chatbots with PVA, Cloud Flows, Power Automate, tables from Dataverse, and environment variables, which is in the end is also Dataverse. So what about the environment? So if you're going to PPAC, as I mentioned, Power Platform Admin Center, you will find the Dataverse for Teams environment there as a specific type called Microsoft Teams. So we already have the default environment, which is a type. You have the developer environments, which are connected to the developer, the Power Apps developer plan. You have the trial environments, which have a little bit time span, the sandboxes and the production environments. And then this is a new type of environments. The amount of settings you have are more restricted. So here you really see that the lightweight part of it. So we have a feature section, which is pretty basic, and we can do something with users and users actually, because the permissions part is actually not done here. And that's it. So from the admin center, it's pretty basic. And then the connection. there is this one-on-one connection between an environment and a specific team. So the link to the team is actually something that you can see in Power Platform Admin Center. And then there are some dedicated Teams apps for solution development. The Power Apps app has its own dedicated app in Teams, and the Power Virtual Agents app Power Virtual Agents has its own app. And those are the apps that you use for building apps and building bots. And you can also do some other stuff. So, but when is this environment provisioned? So for the other types of environments, most of the other types of environments, you actually go to the admin center and create them. But for Dataverse for Teams, it's actually when you create your first app for a specific team, or when you use one of the templates that make use of Dataverse for Team, that's when your environment is provisioned. So you can't go to the admin center to create it, but you will see it over there. And actually, that's where you can actually promote it to a regular Dataverse environment if you need some more of the broader capabilities of regular Dataverse. So first, I want to dive into the tool belt, building and using apps, flows, bots, and reports. So first, let's have a look on how to build apps. So I'm in the Teams client and I'm open the Power Apps app. And then I click on New App to create an app, select my team, and this one already has an environment provisioned. And then the new studio, the Power Apps Studio that's specific for the Power Apps app in Teams opens up. I give my app a name. I save it. And then you see this is a couple of things that are a bit different than the Make portal. This is the ribbon on top, has less options. And the screen, the first screen looks a little bit different. You have the layout. The layouts that's the same as in the regular studio, but there's the with data. And what that does is actually, if you click on it and you select one of your Dataverse tables, a screen that is fully functional to create records, to update records, to delete records, and to view them is actually created for you with a styling that fits in Teams. So it's really, really easy using this to create apps that feel like it's incorporated and part of your Teams application. So let's edit it and then go back. So a couple of things that are also different about this studio is that they introduced a couple of new controls, Fluent UI controls. So for example, the day picker, this one looks really different than the one in the regular studio. Looks a lot nicer. The same for the label. It looks like the same control, but it's actually a different control. And there are also a couple of drawbacks, like the button is also newly created, and you see it's a nice purple. The drawback is that some of the properties that are available in the classic controls are actually not available in these controls. So if you're a regular Power Apps maker and you have used them a lot, you will miss them. So there's an experimental feature where you can actually turn back on classic controls, and then they are available for you to use. I usually try to use the new ones unless I hit a limit where I can't use new ones and then fall back on the old ones. So what is specific for the apps is that, yes, it is included in your Microsoft 365 license. If you use your applications inside of Teams. So they're meant to use from inside of Teams to be able to, you can install them, add them to your chat, install them personal app, add them as a tab. You can also use them outside, but then they become like a premium app, like regular Dataverse applications. So they're really meant to use inside of the Teams client. There are a couple of ways where you can install, how you can install your apps that you build from the Power Apps Teams build tab that you saw a little bit, or from the section of build for your org, built by your colleagues section in the Teams App Store. One of the things that kind of got me, well, that I needed to get to acquainted with was that I was used to opening up my app in the Power Apps mobile app, or go to the app launcher in Office 365, or select an app from the Power Apps tab app, where you can add a Power Apps as tab. But these apps don't show up there. So that's something to just take into consideration. For the Power Apps mobile app, you just use the Teams mobile app. So it's not that you can't use it, it's just not from the regular interfaces that the other Power Apps app services it. And what I already mentioned, if you use it outside of the Teams context, it actually becomes a premium application. So there are multiple ways to publish apps to Teams. So the first option is, I'm a builder, I'm in the Power Apps app, select my app, select the context menu, and then click Add to Teams. And then there's some interface where I can actually download the app as an app package, or I can just select Add to Teams again. And then there's this option to either add it, and that means if I just click add, this is a personal app for me only. I can add it to a team, or I can add it to a chat. The second option is, I'm inside the designer and want to publish to Teams. Then click next. Select the tab or the channel that I want to, the channel where I want to publish it, and this is actually the team where this app, where the environment is connected to, and that's how it's added. The final one is build for your org section in the Teams app, and this is actually available for everyone who has access to the application in some form. So this is, the other two options were more from I'm the maker, or I create the app and I want to share it with my colleagues, and here I can actually the user. So go to the build for your org and then build by your colleagues, and then I can select it. And then it has the same option to add it to a team chat, or just add it for me personally. The benefits of this for added to me personally is that it really becomes an app that's will be part of the left menu, where like my community and chat and teams are, and there's this additional app installed for me, where easy access for me as an end user. So building bots. I can actually go to the Power Apps app again, and then let's play the video. And then click on See More, go to the Build tab, and then from the new option, there's actually a chatbot option. When you select that, that's actually when the Teams app for PVA is launched. You can give your bot a name. The bot is created, and it's immediately added to the same environment, where the Dataverse for Teams environment connected to the specific team. Other than that, this interface is very similar to the regular Power Virtual Agents interface. So the main difference that I could find is how your bot is actually connected to a specific environment. In this scenario, it's actually you select your environment and then you select the bot, and in the regular interface, it's kind of the other way around. But other than that, it's if you're used to working with PVA, it's very similar. One thing before I finish this section is that we have these two designers, the Power Apps app and the Power Apps and Power Virtual Agents app inside of Teams. They are besides the regular portal, but the regular portals like the Maker portal for Power Apps and the PVA portal, you cannot use those to build on Dataverse for Teams. So if you want to create a Canvas app or a bot inside of a Dataverse for Teams environment, you actually have to use one of the two applications I just showed you. Cloudflows is a little bit different. You can use the Power Apps app in Teams to create Cloudflows. Very similar to how it works on the Maker portal. So if you drill down into a specific team, then there's the Cloudflows option below the menu. You can filter down. You see this this new solution solution interface is now also available on the regular Maker portal. So this, if you're used to working with the Power Apps app, this kind of interface should not be very new to you. But what is specific is that underneath the hood, everything is added to a solution. And Cloudflow's outside and inside solutions do behave differently. So because everything in Dataverse for Teams is added automatically to a solution, that means that all Cloudflows will have connection references. And that's actually something for deployment. So now I just did this very, very basic flow where a manual trigger sends an email. But what you see there is that there's a connection reference created in the background. And if I go back to all the resources for this team, there's this mail connection reference that shows up with a very ugly name. So I immediately changed that to something more relevant to this solution. So one other option is, so we can use the Power Apps app, and there is also a Power Automate app in Teams, but unfortunately we can't use that one to use on Dataverse for Teams, but we can use the regular Power Automate portal. So there's not like one way of dealing with this. It really depends on what is the product you're using. The Power Automate portal will show you all environments, including your Dataverse for Teams environments. What you just saw were the solutions available in the Dataverse for Teams environments. There were only 3. And the Common Data Service default solution is actually the solution that's used by Dataverse for Teams to store everything that's created from either the Power Apps app or the PVA app in Teams. And this is the flow that I just created from there. Yes. So, and the next thing, building reports. Well, I might have to change this slide because I saw Ryan Jones's presentation, and they did some nifty things around Dataverse, getting to the right Dataverse environment. And I'm kind of hoping that also works for Dataverse for Teams. Because getting the environment URL for Dataverse for Teams is kind of tricky. But there is actually an ingrained option to get a Power BI PBIX file where your Dataverse for Teams environment is already connected. And that's actually through the Power Apps app, the Build tab. There is, when you select the table section under the data option, there's Analyze in Power BI. And what that does, it downloads a PBIX file where the connection to the correct environment is already set up for you. You can also use the Dataverse connector, but it used to be, you had to have the URL, and it was this kind of URL, and it was, you could not find it in PPAC. So I'm kind of assuming that the environment discovery update will also work for Dataverse for Teams. But if somebody knows that for sure, please share it in the chat, because I'm really interested if that works for Dataverse for Teams as well. Besides this, it's the same. The tables you get are similar. The relational structures is similar. So it's just how to get your environment connected to Power BI that where you have another option, and besides that, there are no real differences. So let's go into working with tables. So this is where the real Dataverse comes through, right? The other stuff was, don't get me wrong, I love Power Apps. That's how I got started on the Power Platform, actually. But this is where it becomes something that's other than we had before within the Microsoft or the 365 environment. What we had with the regular Dataverse, but now in a more lightweight version. It's tables allows you to build a relational structure to use in your apps. So what are tables? Just it's structured data entity with columns with specified data types to store rows of data with possible relationships between different tables. Oh, that's a nifty description. I thought so. So where can I use these tables? So in the Power Apps Studio in Dataverse, in Power Apps in Teams, there's actually an Add Data section where you can create your tables in line. Yes, you're building your app and you're modeling your relational data at the same time. And there's this new interface where you can actually create columns. Yeah, so by default, the name column is already there. You can give it another display name, and you can change the maximum length. You can add some other columns as well with different types. All in line here, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit. So there's another column to this bit, because it not only allows you to add columns, but it also allows you to add data in line. So I'm in my app, I'm building something. I figure out, oh, I missed something in my data model, or I miss, I don't know, some data inside of one of my tables. I don't have to go out of the studio. I can just do it from right here. And that's actually, I have to say, the only time I use this, because I prefer the other way of dealing with tables, which is more similar to how you do it in a regular Dataverse environment. I find this very handy for, I forgot something and I need to fix it while I'm building. But I prefer to start modeling first before I start building. So in the Build tab, when I select my team, under the new, there's only app and chatbot. But when I select see all, I actually get this interface where I can create more than just an app and a bot. And if you, this new create new table interface is very similar to how it's done on regular Dataverse. A couple of the features are missing. As mentioned, it's a lightweight version, but a lot of it is there, including the option to give my primary column another name to start with. So my schema name is also not prefix and name behind it. So in this case, I'm using auto-number because yes, auto-number is available in here. A couple of other things are not available, but this one is. So let's see if we can speed it up a little bit. So adding some auto-number in there. Save it. And then add another column. And now you see a lot more data types than were available from the Teams interface. So I think there's only one that's not available from this interface, but most of them are just the same as regular Dataverse. Calculated a roll-up, it's mentioned here, but it's actually not working in Dataverse for Teams, so just ignore that. So calculated is not working, but formula column with power effects actually is. Ryan also showed it in preview. And that's actually where the second option, so going through the build tab and then adding your table from there instead of through the studio, is not working, because this will only work if you're interacting with the table from the Power Apps Studio. So you can use this to create automatic calculations using Power Effects formulas to perform calculations on the fly, like we used to with calculated columns, but just using Power Effects instead of what we were used to before. You can use the values of multiple columns of the row you're working on, and the end result is one of these types, like text, decimal, Boolean, or date. One note, not all the operators and formulas are available to use. I have a link to the Microsoft Docs where you can reference what you can and cannot use in calculated columns. Yes, this is the correct one. So I also have my demo of a calculated column, and I thought, let's do a deadline. So I'm going to my table, which is unicorns, because, well, I love unicorns. And for some reason, this unicorn needs a deadline. Don't ask me why. So I select the formula type, give it a name, deadline, and I'm going to use the created on field to calculate my deadline. So I'm just referencing the column created on, using the date add function, the Power Apps date add function. And then I thought, let's do it 14 days based on 14 days in the future compared to the created on. So I already have some data in here. So the deadline column is created. So the only thing I now need to do is do a refresh, and the calculations happen. There's one drawback I've found so far, is that I'm actually not able to modify the calculation afterwards. So maybe someone found it somewhere. I didn't, not yet. Even from the other interface, like I'm showing now, the column shows up, but there is no, I can't get to the formula that was added to the column. So you have to have your calculations right up front, and hopefully that will change at some point, because mistakes are easily made. I see one raised hand. I'm just going to continue. Let's see. Then the relationship types. If you're used to Dataverse, this is not new for you, because this is exactly the same for Dataverse for Teams and regular Dataverse. You have your many-to-one, you one-to-many, and your many-to-many. And that's how you build up your relational structure. The many-to-many is just a warning. I tend to ignore it, because a many-to-many basically means you have an intersection table between the two tables. That's hidden from you. And sometimes you just need to be able to access that table, which is kind of hard if you're using the out-of-the-box many-to-many. So there are actually two ways of creating relationships. One is simply to create a lookup field from one table to another. So in that case, create a column, and you can use this from both the interfaces, like in the studio, or from this more similar to Dataverse. You select the lookup data type, and then select your related table. And I prefer this way because then I'm able to actually modify the relationship name instead of using the out-of-the-box one. And that's something that you cannot do from the studio. So when I do this, my field is created and my relationship is created. Saving the table. Let's speed it up a little bit. So from here, I can also create relationships. And instead of creating a field, I select the two tables that I want to link to each other. There's a lookup column that's created as well. I can change the relationship name as well. And I have the option, the advanced option, to actually determine what needs to happen on deletion behavior or other types of behaviors. So this is one of the biggest benefits of using Dataverse for Teams compared to other freemium data sources within Microsoft 365. It's this awesome relational structuring capabilities. And then views. Yes, we don't have model-driven apps yet, hopefully, in Dataverse for Teams. But that doesn't mean that views cannot play a role, because views are very, very powerful, in my opinion. You can reference views within Canvas apps, and making a view means that you can actually do complex filtering that you can reuse through multiple apps. So the capabilities here are just as awesome as they are in regular Dataverse. You can filter down on all the columns. You can filter on related columns. You have the awesome options with data where you can actually fetch data based on the next number of weeks in upfront or in the past or whatnot. Things that if you try to do that in Canvas apps with Power Effects, usually you can, but you get like these massive amounts of formulas that you need to do. Well, while referencing a view is doing a filter on a table and filtering it on the view, and that gets you all the details, all the configuration that you have in your view. So this was tables. Some new, a lot of it is just regular Dataverse, but through a little bit of a different user interface. Permissions, that's where it really deviates from regular Dataverse. Still, if you understand permissions on Dataverse, you actually know the concept that's used here. It's just you can't, the options, the possibilities that you have to modify it are limited. So custom security roles, that's not an option. There are predefined, you have a set of predefined roles, and what the role can and cannot do, you can modify to a certain extent. And the permissions are connected to the team's roles. That's why I said in the beginning, it's handy to understand how teams work regarding roles. So you have team owners, team members, and team guests. And then there's this colleagues with access, which is actually where Dataverse for Teams extends the groups that are available within Teams. The team's owners will be system administrator on the Dataverse for Teams environment, meaning they can do everything, including deleting the environment. And they have access to all data, can build everything, can see everything, basically God mode. Team members are the colleagues that are a member of the team. For them, you can actually modify what they can and cannot do on the tables in your Dataverse for Teams environment. So this is very specific to the data inside of the Dataverse for Teams. So you can, for example, create apps in Dataverse for Teams connecting to other data sources, but this will mainly apply to what they can do with the data inside of Dataverse. And then there's Teams guests. And the guests are the people outside of your organization who are also part of the team there is a specific group here that also can make use of these applications built on Dataverse. And then there is one other group, and that's colleagues with access. This colleagues with access actually allows you to add one additional ID group where you can share applications and the use of the Dataverse for Teams tables with that ID group, and everyone inside of that ID group can interact with these apps without having to be an owner member or a guest of the team connected to the environment. So we have the 4 groups, and then we have permission levels. So yeah, so you can do a lot with it, but the user interface of modifying security roles is kind of awful. Here it's very straightforward. There are 5 permission levels, and let's ignore the none, because that basically means no access at all. So in the end, you have 4 permission levels that allow you to grant access to a certain extent from one of the groups to one of the tables. Full access is you can do everything. Create new read all, update or delete all records. All team owners by default have this role of access to all tables, and you cannot modify it because that's the system administrator role. The team members by default have this permission level. So if you don't want them to have full access, you actually have to modify it to one of the other permission levels. One step down is collaborate. That means that people that with that permission level can create new records or rows. This actually, I was reading this picture, I thought, why it's still records? It needs to be rows. New naming conventions. Create new rows. Read all rows created by everyone else, but they cannot only update or delete their own records. And own me here means they are the owner of the row. So that's the concept comes from Dataverse, where you have the created by, the modified by, and the owner of a record or row. And this permission level actually relies on that concept, who is in the owner field of the row. The next thing is reference. You cannot create new rows. You can read all there is in the table, but you can't update or delete. And then private. You can create new ones, new rows. You can read your own and you update or delete your own, but you can't read or update or delete anyone else's rows. So doing permissions in Dataverse for Teams is a lot more restrictive than in a regular Dataverse, and you have to kind of go through, does it fit my scenario? Sometimes you have to do security by obscurity, which I generally don't like, but yeah, you only have the couple of groups and a couple of permission levels. So because we have this colleagues with access thing, there is the benefit of people don't have access to the environment itself. So it's really hard for them to actually get to the data another way than through the application that you share with them. But let's face it, for your business critical, highly confidential applications, don't use this. Go regular Dataverse. Other than that, I would say, so I've been a SharePoint consultant one time in my life, and I prefer this way more than how it's set up in SharePoint. It's clear. It's really understandable what permission level can do. The groups it's clear what groups you have, and it's easy to set up. So how then to, this is the wrong one, I think. Oh yeah, how then to apply permissions on a table. So you're in the build tab, in the table section, you have a table selected, you click on manage, what was it again? manage permissions. And that's where you see this. On the left, you have the 4 groups that I mentioned: owner, member, guests, and colleagues with access. You select the group you want to modify and then select the permission level. So as you see, the owner is grayed out because the owner always have full access. So if you don't want someone to have full access, you have to unown him, basically. Make him a member and then modify the member role. But it applies to all members. So you cannot differentiate between one group of members and another group. It applies to all members. And then how to provide access to user outside of the team membership. So if you're in the same section in the Build tab, there's actually this Share with Colleagues tab. And there you can add one additional security group that you can use on the same tab to actually say, I want people to use this app and this app and this app. And if you have set up your permissions correctly, sharing the app and the permissions will grant them the access they need to use the application. Okay, let's see how we're on time. So application lifecycle management. This is kind of if you're used to working with solutions and pipelines and doing things in regular Dataverse, this is also a section where there are limitations, but there's still you can find a structure for proper ALM also for Dataverse for Teams, although less automated, I'll have to say. First, let's have a look at the default behavior. You changed nothing about the setup and you're just going to the Power Apps app or the PVA app. What then happens? All the resources in Power Apps, Teams app and PVA app are part of a solution. So there's no thing outside of solutions if you're using one of these apps. But they're added that's kind of the default solution they're using. It's not the default solution, but everything is added to a solution called Common Data Service Default Solution. Yeah, that's the name still. It's not the first default solution, but Common Data Service Default Solution. And there's a publisher connected to this solution called CDS Default Publisher, and it will have an ugly prefix like something like CR1, CO, C0, or something like that. So if you don't do anything, your stuff will be added to this solution and the prefix will be something like this. But there are other ways. For example, I can actually open the Power Apps portal if I click on the three dots, and there I can go to the Solution Explorer. And in this case, I'm going to the Common Data Service Default Solution, but I can also create my own custom solution. So obviously something with unicorns in the name, and the publish that I have available are 2 default publishers. I don't want that. I create my own publisher. Unicorns rock, because they do. And then I can actually use a nice prefix. So I can see afterwards when I export my solution, import it in another environment, where was the solution created by and what was it part of again? And there you go. And now I can actually add all the stuff that is in the Common Data Service Default Solution in here. Obviously, it was created in the other solution, so it doesn't have the nice prefixes. But creating new stuff can also be done from here, just not everything. So you can create tables, you can create cloud flows, you can create environment variables, but you can't create apps and bots from this interface. That's something that really needs to happen in the PVA and the Power App app. Let's speed this forward a little bit. So I created, in this demo, I created an environment variable. And when I go back, and I added it to the Common Data Service default solution, because if you don't do that, what is shown here in the Power Apps app and Teams is actually everything that is inside of the Common Data Service default solution. So if you use your custom solution, which I would say, if it's a bigger solution, I would always do this. But you will need to add everything to the Common Data Service default solution to make it available from the Power Apps interface. By the way, also a very nice way of hiding stuff from users. But that's another topic. There is a way actually to also get nice prefixes for all the stuff you create from here, and that is you can actually change the publisher of the Common Data Service default solution. So that's actually what I would do. One of the two things I would do before starting developing. It's actually create my custom solution, create a custom publisher, add that to both my custom solution and the Common Data Service default solution. And then make sure everything is inside of both. So how to, the same thing, by the way, I forgot one thing, you can do from the Power Automate portal, because as mentioned, you can select Dataverse for Teams environment from the environment selection, and the solution explorer is also there, so you can create the solutions and you can add your custom publisher and then deploy, manage it all neatly inside of a package of your choosing. Deploying applications, automation. I was thinking about it. We don't have API access in Dataverse for Teams, which means no CI/CD pipelines or similar automated deployments, because they almost all rely on the API. I was thinking there might be an option to automate it using RPA. I thought maybe I'll try that out sometime. But apart from that, there is not a real option to deploy I could think of. Although now I'm thinking of it, maybe we can create a Dataverse for Teams solution to do deployment of Dataverse for Teams solutions. And maybe another option. So basically, manual is the way to go. So there are a couple of ways that you can do to deploy, make a package of your application. One of them is from the Power Apps app, where you select the resources that you want to deploy, click on the export. And then there's an option to export all dependencies, that automatically everything that's related is added to the export. And then a zip file is created where everything is in that. It's just a zip file, very similar to a regular unmanaged solution. Solution XML, some customizations, my Canvas apps in there, the formula of my formula column is in there. And when I go to another team where I click on import, I browse and select my zip file. Click on next. And after processing, all the stuff is added to this same team. So connection references, as I mentioned, so you now get the interface to actually create the connection reference that you need to on import of the solution. But doing it this way means that you're moving stuff from the Common Data Service default solution from one team's environment to the Common Data Service default solution of another Dataverse for Teams environment. So what if you actually want to kind of contain the package that you created? That's the other option. When I go to the Power Apps portal or the Power Automate portal, I have the option to export my solution like in a regular Dataverse environment. And here I have the option to managed and unmanaged. So if I do it managed and export it and then import it in the Dataverse for Teams environment, it will be actually separated from the rest of the content in of the resources in the Dataverse for Teams environment. Let's speed it up a little. So here I'm an import, I'm setting an environment variable. So here it's importing my managed solution. And when I go to the Build tab, I will find my solution under Installed Apps. So using managed solutions in this way actually contains everything, including the name, in a separated way, besides the stuff that I create there. And that's the end of the ALM. So let's see, we're almost on time. So let's go through if there are any questions that are not answered. Let's see, we can create custom connectors via Azure API. Yes, that's, I saw there are some questions on premium. Like, besides Dataverse for Teams, all other premium connectors are still premium. Like, besides the Dataverse connector, when consumed in Teams, all other premium connectors are still premium. Custom connector are actually the regular custom connector, like we know them in regular Dataverse environments, are not there. The only option that we have, if we're using Azure API management, to push an API to a Dataverse for Teams environment, which in the end becomes a custom connector, and that one is actually not premium. And so that's included in the use of Dataverse for Teams. So the only way to get custom connectors in the first place is through Azure API management in Dataverse for Teams. All the other stuff is still, you need a premium license if you're using a premium connector. Yeah, good point about upgrading. So you can, if at some point you created your Dataverse for Teams application and you find that it's too limited, there are some stuff that that you want to use that's not part of it. There is this option to promote, let's so to say, your Dataverse for Teams environment to a full Dataverse environment. Keeping all the stuff you created in there, but you will separate the connection between the team and the Dataverse and the environment. It just after that, it just starts behaving as a regular one. So, Michael Forth, no, it becomes a regular Dataverse environment. It's actually the connection between the environment and Teams is actually broken, and you can use all the stuff in the other ways that you can with a regular environment, but not anymore in the same way as other Dataverse for Teams environments. Since we're on time, I'm leaving it that and let you navigate through the tips and tricks and gotchas on your own later. Thank you.